If you saw our video about replacing a defective window in our motorhome, you know that it's not that difficult. But what if you don't have a window and you want to put one in where none existed? Like if you're doing a van conversion. Van life and Class B living is so popular and growing. It's a huge segment of the RV community that we wanted to show you. If you're going to do a van conversion and put a window in, that's not that difficult either. Our window has been top-notch since we put it in. It's the best window we have in our RV. So we're back here today at Peninsula Glass, where we're going to show you how easy it is to cut a hole in the side of your van and install a brand new window where none existed before.
The van we'll be working on today is a brand new Ram ProMaster, whose owner has graciously allowed us to video. He bought this beautiful van specifically to convert it into a camper, and he's already gotten started. Insulation is in place and wiring is underway. He's having 2 windows installed today, a large one on the left side, right behind the driver's seat, and a smaller one on the right side, near the rear of the van. Our instructor today is George, who's worked here at Peninsula Glass literally for decades. He's installed far more windows than he could ever count, and he's going to share some great tips and tricks that professionals use to make this project a breeze. Motion Windows, which is the Peninsula Glass brand for RV, boat, and specialty vehicle windows, come in 2 main sections: the window itself and the clamp ring, which holds the window in place. The first step is to make a cardboard template. We'll make a template for the smaller window first. Place the clamp ring down onto a suitably sized piece of cardboard with the smaller inner portion that has the screw holes facing down. Hold the ring firmly and carefully trace all the way around the outside edge. Again, make sure that you're tracing the outside of the smaller inner part of the ring. Then use a sharp utility knife to carefully cut right on the line. The result will be an exact template for the cutout you'll be making in the wall. For larger windows, the clamp ring comes in 2 pieces. Before we can trace around them, we need to temporarily connect them together. Set them with the larger outer section facing down, and use 2 pieces of masking tape, one on each side, to hold them together. Now flip them over so the smaller inner section is facing down onto the cardboard. Then trace around the outside edge, exactly as we did for the smaller window, and cut out the template. Because this is a Ram ProMaster van, we'll be removing the ribs from the inside of the walls at both window locations. After we show you how to do that, we'll explain how Sprinter, Transit, and some other vans are slightly different. For this part, we'll need a hammer, a cold chisel, and a putty knife. The ribs in a Ram van are held in place by 4 metal tabs, 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom, as well as some sealant along the length. Use the hammer and chisel to cut the tabs one at a time. They're made of sheet metal, so they're fairly easy to get through without using a lot of force. Then tap the putty knife between the rib and the wall to slice through the sealant. And remove the rib. Chisel away at whatever's left of the tabs. And scrape off the excess sealant with the putty knife. These ribs that we just removed are where this Ram ProMaster differs from Sprinter, Transit, and other vans. If we take a look inside a Sprinter, we can see the ribs aren't as deep. So that you can really see the difference, here's the rib we just removed from the Ram. You can see how much deeper it is, standing quite a bit further off the wall. With a Sprinter or Transit, you don't need to remove them, since you can cut right through them instead. You can simply place your template right over the ribs and trace the outline. With the rib removed from the ProMaster, we can do the same thing here, placing and tracing around the template. If it makes it easier for you, you can use painter's tape to hold your template in place while tracing. Because the customer wants the larger driver's side window positioned as high up as possible, George positioned the template 3/4 of an inch down from the upper framework. That leaves just enough space to ensure that the clamp ring clears it. The reason we work from the inside is to be sure the window opening doesn't conflict with any other structural components or framework. Take measurements as needed to make sure your template is exactly where you want it. Now it's time to break out a drill and make the first holes in your van. They suggest using a 3/32 inch bit. At the point where each curved radius meets the straight line, drill a small hole in the wall. That's a total of 8 holes, one on each edge of each radius on all 4 corners. George is paying attention to detail by catching the metal bits as he drills the holes. On a Sprinter or Transit van, it would be the same, except the ribs would still be in place. Now he'll use those holes to transfer the outline to the outside of the van. He uses a straight edge to draw horizontal lines connecting the 2 upper holes and the 2 lower holes. Then draws vertical lines connecting the holes on the left side and the right side. Verify the correct radius using the radius template, which you can print from the Motion Windows website and cut out. The radius is either 2.5 inches or 3 inches, which you can confirm by comparing the template to your window. Now you'll have a perfect outline on the outside of your van, almost ready for cutting. First, George is going to protect the finish by applying a clear film that sticks to the surface. Followed by some painter's tape right around the outline. To avoid a sticky mess, don't use masking tape for this. Now comes a little trick to keep from filling your van with metal filings. George tapes along one edge of an old blanket, then hangs it just under the bottom of the outline. Attach the loose end of the blanket above the window outline using spring-loaded clamps or tape. This will catch the metal shavings as they fall inside the van. Now it's time for the real cutting tools: an angle grinder, a jigsaw, and a face mask and hearing protection. Before he starts cutting, George marks the center of the outline at the top and bottom. This is one of several pro tips George is about to share with us. He also makes 2 marks just above the lower edge of the outline. These are the spots he's going to cut through with the angle grinder. When it's time for the jigsaw, use a fine metal blade with 24 teeth per inch. George follows a specific pattern to make the job easier. He starts at the lower left. He cuts the entire left side, including both corners, then places a piece of tape over the cut. Then he does the exact same thing on the other side, starting at the lower right and cutting the entire right side, including both corners. And then adds another piece of tape over that cut as well. Now he'll cut from the lower left and right corners in toward the center, but he'll stop just short of the center line he drew earlier. For Sprinter and Transit vans, it can make cutting easier if you mark the location of the ribs so you'll know where they are as you're cutting. Never remove the saw from the cut until the blade has completely stopped moving. This prevents it from jumping in and out while you're trying to remove it. And never pull it out too fast, since that can bend the metal if it catches in the cut. Then he'll do the same thing at the top, coming in first from one side, almost to the center, and then from the other side, again, not quite all the way to the center line. This leaves the entire cutout held in place by a narrow section of metal at the top and bottom, and by the tape at both sides, keeping it as stable as possible, as long as possible, instead of letting it flap around while you're cutting it. All that's left is to complete the cut at the bottom, followed by cutting the small section at the top. Since all that's holding the panel in place now is the tape, he can simply pull it off. There are likely to be some sharp edges, especially where the angle grinder was used, so tape those up for protection. Run a file over the edges to remove any loose or sharp metal. Paint the edge of the metal to prevent rust. Remove the protective tape and film, and be sure the surface is clean before installing the window. He'll also remove the blanket from the inside, being careful not to shake any metal filings onto the floor. If you're cutting more than one window, like we are today, you can save time by simply moving the blanket from the first window directly to the second without emptying the filings out of it. Now George repeats the exact same steps to cut the hole for the second, smaller window on the passenger side. With both openings cut and ready, a little cleanup is in order. And then it's time to install both windows. For that, you'll want some lacquer thinner, window cleaner, a cordless drill, a pair of scissors, the foam tape and screws that came with your motion window, and you might need a pair of pliers with some protective foam or tape on them. We'll be adhering the foam tape to this surface, but since the windows are powder coated, start by cleaning the metal with lacquer thinner. Starting at the center of the bottom edge of the window, apply the foam tape. Adhere the straight sections with the paper backing in place, and then peel it back. To help the foam round the corners smoothly, peel back the paper before pressing the tape into place.
Either lick your finger or dip it in water or something.
Tape the entire perimeter in one unbroken piece. And when you get back to the beginning, overlap the tape just a small amount to ensure a tight seal. This is where there's another minor difference between different vans. On this ProMaster, we'll install the windows first. On Transit and Sprinter vans, the clamp ring goes in first. That's because of that difference with the ribs. Here's George installing the two-piece clamp ring on a van that had its ribs cut. He slots the edges of the ring underneath the remaining parts of the ribs, and then tapes the two pieces back together. Then the window will be installed from the outside with the clamp ring already in place. Since we totally removed the ribs on the ProMaster, the window can go in first and the clamp ring second. It may seem counterintuitive, but spray the tape lightly with window cleaner. That will allow for adjustments when placing the window. Have a helper insert the window through the opening and hold it in place for you. Opening the slider makes it easier to handle. Measure to confirm that the window is positioned properly and level. There should be a little play for fine-tuning the position to make sure the window is centered and level. Lightly install one screw on each side. And do a final alignment check. It's important that the screws go into the channel at the edge of the window. This arrow shows you where that channel is. Make sure the ends of the two clamp ring sections line up, but don't overlap. Then continue installing the rest of the screws. When George installs the smaller window, he'll show us what he uses the padded pair of pliers for. Just like the one we already installed, the window goes in first, followed by the clamp ring. Before installing the ring, George removes the adhesive strip that holds the seam together. He starts by securing the right side of the ring into place. To bring the left side firmly against the right side and close any gap in the seam, he uses the pliers to squeeze the ring against the window frame, so he can install the screw to lock it into place. Then the remainder of the screws can go in. The final step in the process is to give everything a good cleaning. With two beautiful motion windows in place, this happy camper can head off to finish his conversion project. We hope this video helps make this part of your van conversion a little more manageable. If you'd like to install motion windows by Peninsula Glass, we love ours, so we know you will too. We'll put a link to their website down below so you can order directly from the factory. As always, safe travels and thanks for watching.